Have you ever watched a father realize his disappointment daughter holds the key to his empire's survival? For 15 years, my father told everyone I was the family failure. While my brother got the corner office at Myers Construction, I got mockery at every family dinner. But last week, when Dad ambushed me with 3 lawyers to steal my $8 million inheritance, he made one fatal mistake. He scheduled it 3 days before the Northwest Construction Summit, where he needed to secure $150 million in funding or watch his empire crumble. What he didn't know? I controlled that funding. I'm Maya Myers, 32 years old, and this is the story of how one inheritance dispute became the most satisfying boardroom reversal of my career. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. Some failures, Dad always said, teach you more than success ever could. He'd been saying it about me for 15 years, usually with a scotch in hand, and Brandon's latest achievement fresh on his lips. November 10th, 7 p.m., the monthly family dinner at my parents' Colonial in Bellevue. I sat at the same spot I'd occupied since age 17, far end of the dining table, closest to the kitchen door. The seat for the one who might need to help with dishes or fetch something forgotten. The helper's seat, never the guest of honors. $10 million contract with the city, Brandon announced, sliding the paperwork across mahogany toward our father. Largest single deal in Myers Construction history. Dad's eyes lit up the way they never did for my quarterly reports. That's my boy. Real buildings, real impact. He glanced at me. Maya's still playing with imaginary money over at, what's it called again? Investment management, I said quietly. Right, moving numbers on screens. He turned back to Brandon. While your brother's building Seattle's skyline. Mom nodded along, her practiced smile never wavering. Patricia Myers had perfected the art of agreeable silence decades ago. My phone buzzed. An email from D. Harrison, subject line. Waterfront proposal approved. $50 million. Our biggest deal yet. I didn't open it, didn't mention it. What was the point? In this room, my achievements were invisible, worthless as the imaginary money I managed. Brandon smirked. Maybe someday Maya will join the family business. Do something real. I have a real job, Brandon. Sure you do. He leaned back, mimicking Dad's posture perfectly. But it's not building anything, is it? Not leaving a legacy. I excused myself to the bathroom, but stopped in the hallway at Grandmother Eleanor's portrait. She'd been the only one who saw me differently. The only one who'd said, Maya, dear, sometimes the most powerful position is the one nobody sees coming. She'd died last month, left me more than memories, though the family didn't know that yet. Her lawyer had contacted me privately, per her instructions. $8 million, transferred to a trust in my name alone. Her letter had been simple. For my bravest grandchild, the one who chose her own path. The call came 3 days later, while I was reviewing portfolios at my desk. Mom, breathless and accusatory. Maya, we need to talk about your grandmother's will. What about it? Don't play dumb. James Mitchell just left your father's office. $8 million, Maya. $8 million that should be in the family trust. So they'd found out. Grandmother's lawyer must have finally processed the public filing. It was grandmother's decision. Your grandmother was 93 and clearly confused. That money belongs to Myers Construction. Your father's already called a family meeting. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Don't even think about missing it. The line went dead. I stared at the Seattle skyline from my 32nd floor office. Not that they knew I had a corner office. Not that they knew much about my life at all. Another text from Brandon. Seriously? You manipulated a dying woman? Then Dad. We need to discuss this like a family. Bring the documentation. 14 missed calls by lunch. Each voicemail more aggressive than the last. Mom's tears, Dad's threats, Brandon's accusations of elder abuse, of taking advantage of a senile woman. Senile. They'd called the woman who'd built the foundation of their empire senile. Eleanor Myers had co-founded Myers Construction in 1965, had run the finances until 1995. She taught me everything about reading numbers, about seeing the real story beneath the surface. Her letter was in my desk drawer. I pulled it out, reading her postscript again. "They'll come for it, dear one. They always come for what they think they're owed. But remember, possession isn't ownership, and blood isn't loyalty. The only person you owe anything to is yourself." She'd known exactly what she was doing, just like she'd known when she'd introduced me to David Harrison 5 years ago at a charity gala. "Maya, meet David. He runs Quantum Ventures. I think you two should talk." That introduction had changed everything. But my family didn't know that story. They only knew I'd abandoned them for some little job in finance. "Your grandmother was senile, Maya," Brandon had texted again. "This money belongs to the family business." I looked at my second monitor, where Myers Construction's financial data sprawled across the screen. They were hemorrhaging money on the waterfront tower project, down to their last 90 days of operating capital. They didn't just want my inheritance, they needed it. Myers Construction needed $150 million, and they needed it by November 20th. I knew this because David had forwarded me their loan application to Quantum Ventures 2 weeks ago, marked urgent, confidential. "Your father's company?" he'd asked, eyebrow raised. "They don't know I work here," I'd reminded him. "And they can't know, not yet." The waterfront tower project was supposed to be Brandon's masterpiece, 40 stories of mixed-use development on Seattle's most expensive real estate. Except they'd underbid by $30 million, hidden the shortfall from investors, and burned through their credit lines trying to stay afloat. Classic Myers arrogance. Build first, find money later. Now they had 10 days to secure funding or forfeit the project. The penalties alone would bankrupt them. My phone rang. Dad. "Maya, I'm not asking anymore. The meeting is tomorrow at 2 p.m. Bring the checkbook for that trust account." "Dad, No excuses. Your grandmother's money was meant for the family business. She built this company. You think she'd want to see it fail because you're having some rebellious phase?" "I'm 32. It's not a phase." "Then it's selfishness. Pure selfishness." His voice dropped to that dangerous, quiet tone I remembered from childhood. "You have no idea what's at stake here. The meeting is tomorrow. Don't make me come get you." He hung up. I pulled up the Quantum Ventures Investment Committee notes. We'd approved $150 million for a qualifying Seattle construction project, pending final partner authorization. My authorization. The irony was perfect. They needed exactly what I could provide. But they'd never asked, never once considered that maybe, just maybe, their failure daughter might have something to offer beyond being their ATM. Tomorrow's meeting would be interesting. They wanted my $8 million as a Band-Aid. They had no idea I held the cure. Mom called 6 times that evening. I answered on the 7th. "Maya, sweetheart." Her voice dripped with the kind of sweetness she reserved for getting her way. "I know things have been difficult between you and your father, but family isn't about keeping score. It's about loyalty. Like the loyalty you showed when Dad said I'd never amount to anything?" A pause. "He was trying to motivate you. For 15 years? Maya, please. Brandon's under so much pressure. The waterfront project." She caught herself. "Your father's worked his whole life for this company. Are you really going to let it crumble over some feminist statement?" "This isn't about feminism, Mom. Grandmother left me that money." She wasn't thinking clearly. The medications, her age. "Stop." I cut her off. "She was sharp until the end, and you know it." The sweetness evaporated. "If you don't bring that money tomorrow, you're out. No more family dinners, no more holidays. Brandon won't let his kids near you. You'll be completely cut off." "From what? Being insulted once a month over pot roast?" "From being a Myers." Her voice turned cold. "Think about that, Maya. Is your pride worth losing your family?" After she hung up, I sat in my Quantum Ventures office, staring at the city lights. The Seattle skyline Brandon claimed to be building, though half those towers bore other companies' names. Real builders. Successful ones. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a folder labeled QV Investment Proposal, Waterfront Tower. Inside, a comprehensive analysis of Myers Construction's finances. The real ones, not the sanitized versions they showed investors. 30 million in hidden debt, forged signatures on permit applications, Brandon's cocaine habit expensed as client entertainment. They wanted to talk about family loyalty? Tomorrow, they'd learn what loyalty actually cost. At midnight, I made my decision. The waterfront tower file spread across my desk told a story of systematic fraud. Not enough to trigger criminal charges. The Myers family was too smart for that. But enough to destroy any legitimate investor's confidence. Brandon had been doctoring progress reports. Dad had been shuffling funds between projects to hide shortfalls. The company was a house of cards, and November 20th would bring the wind. I picked up my phone and texted David. "I'll need you at the Northwest Summit on the 18th. His response was immediate despite the hour. "Finally ready to play your hand?" "They're forcing it. Family meeting tomorrow. They want my inheritance to prop up their mess." And instead, I looked at the folder again. At the investment committee's approval for $150 million. At the power I'd quietly accumulated while they'd dismissed me as a failure. Instead, I'm going to give them exactly what they've always given me. The truth about what they think I'm worth. I prepared 2 folders. The first, labeled Personal Documents, contained grandmother's will, her letter, and my trust documentation. The second, thicker folder bore the Quantum Ventures logo and a single label, QV Investment Proposal. Inside that second folder was everything. Myers Construction's real financials, our investment terms, and most importantly, Clause 7.3 of our standard contract. Primary investor retains veto power over all major financial decisions. If they wanted my money so badly, they could have it. All 150 million of it, with strings attached that would strangle their pride. I closed both folders, placed them in my briefcase, and set my alarm for noon. The family meeting was at 2 p.m. For once in my life, I wouldn't arrive early to help set up. Tomorrow they'd learn that the family failure had been taking notes all along. November 15th, 2 p.m., Myers Construction Boardroom. I arrived to find them already assembled, a practiced ambush. Dad at the head of the table, Brandon to his right, Mom to his left, and 3 men in identical Navy suits I didn't recognize, until I saw the Harrison and Associates briefcases. Lawyers. They'd brought lawyers to a family meeting. Maya. Dad didn't stand. "Glad you could make it. These gentlemen are here to help us resolve this confusion about your grandmother's estate." The lead attorney, a silver-haired man with cold eyes, slid a stack of documents across the table. 12 pages, dense with legal text. I caught key phrases without picking them up. Undue influence, diminished capacity, family trust restoration. "We've prepared everything," the lawyer said. "Simply sign where indicated, and the funds will be transferred to their rightful place." Brandon smirked. "We're trying to make this easy for you, Maya." I smiled and pulled out my phone, sending a quick text. Then I looked at the lawyer's nameplates. Harrison and Associates. The same Harrison as David Harrison. What were the odds? "Interesting choice of firm," I said, settling into my chair. "The best in Seattle," Dad said. "They specialize in estate disputes." "I'm sure they do." I glanced at the middle lawyer, whose nameplate read Mitchell. "James Mitchell, right? You were grandmother's attorney." He shifted uncomfortably. "I was, but I'm here today representing Myers Construction." "How convenient." I didn't touch the papers. "Tell me, Mr. Mitchell, did you happen to mention to my grandmother that you also worked for my father?" "That's irrelevant," Dad interrupted. "Sign the papers, Maya." The lawyers exchanged glances. They hadn't expected questions. They'd expected the family disappointment to fold under pressure, just like always. They had no idea who they were really dealing with. "Let me explain your position," the lead lawyer said, his tone shifting to courtroom intimidation. "We've consulted 3 firms. You don't have a case. Your grandmother was 93 on multiple medications and made this change to her will just weeks before her death. Classic signs of undue influence." "Undue influence?" I kept my voice steady. "I visited her twice a month." "While your brother was building the family legacy," Brandon added. "Convenient timing, wasn't it? Right when you knew she was vulnerable." The second lawyer opened his briefcase, pulling out more documents. "We have affidavits from her nurses stating she was confused in her final weeks, calling people by wrong names, forgetting dates." "One nurse," I corrected, "who was fired for stealing medication. But please, continue." Dad's jaw tightened. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. We're prepared to file a formal challenge, public court proceedings. Your name in the papers as the granddaughter who manipulated a dying woman." "The media loves these stories," Brandon said, "especially in Seattle's business community. Imagine trying to build a career after that kind of scandal." Mom finally spoke, her voice carefully modulated. "We don't want that for you, sweetheart. Just sign the papers. Keep the family together." The third lawyer, silent until now, placed a pen next to the documents. "You have 72 hours to decide. After that, we file. The damage to your reputation will be considerable." "Just sign it, Maya," Brandon said, already calculating what 8 million could do for Waterfront Tower. "For once in your life, do the right thing for this family." I looked at each of them in turn. The lawyers with their practiced intimidation, my parents with their emotional manipulation, Brandon with his smug certainty. 72 hours? I asked. "That's generous," the lead lawyer said. "It is." I stood. "See you at the summit, Dad." Dad's face flushed red. "Sit down, we're not done here." "Actually," I started, but he slammed his hand on the table. "Your grandmother was confused when she signed that will. Confused and manipulated. She called me Brandon twice in her last week. She thought it was 1995. She knew exactly what year it was," I said quietly. "She knew you'd already started planning to divide her estate before she was gone. She knew about the family meeting you held while she was in hospice." Mom gasped. "How did you—" "She was conscious, Mom. Dying, not deaf." Brandon stood now too. "You poisoned her against us." "No, you did that yourselves." I pulled out my phone, checking the time. 48 hours until the summit. You should be preparing your presentation, not ambushing me with lawyers." The lead attorney frowned. "What summit?" Dad went pale. "That's not your concern." But Brandon couldn't help himself. "The Northwest Construction Summit, where we're announcing Waterfront Tower's funding. Not that it's any of your business, Maya." "Everything's been arranged," Dad said quickly. Too quickly. "The funding is secured." I studied his face, the same tell he'd had since I was young, the slight twitch below his left eye when he was bluffing. "Is it? Because I heard 3 investors pulled out last week." "How could you possibly—" Brandon stopped himself. "I work in finance, remember? That imaginary money you mock? It talks. And right now, it's saying Myers Construction needs 150 million by November 20th, or you lose everything." The room went silent. Mom's hands trembled. "Robert?" "It's handled," Dad said, but his voice cracked. I picked up my briefcase. 48 hours to think about it, right? What a coincidence. That's exactly when you'll be on stage, telling 500 people about your secured funding. Maya, see you there." I made it to the door before Dad played his last card. "You walk out now, you're done. No inheritance from me or your mother. No place in this family. Brandon's kids won't even know your name." I paused, hand on the doorknob. "I need time to think." 48 hours, Maya. Decide what matters more, your pride or your family." Brandon was already on his phone, probably texting his wife the good news. Mom had her hand on Dad's arm, that practiced gesture of support. The lawyers were packing up, confident in their intimidation. They thought they'd won. The family failure had buckled, just like always, asked for time to think, which meant time to surrender. 2 days, the lead lawyer reminded me. After that, we file. I nodded, not trusting my voice to stay steady. Let them think I was overwhelmed. Let them think I was scared. Brandon couldn't resist one more jab. Hey, Maya, bring the checkbook to the summit. We'll make it easy. You can sign the transfer right after Dad's presentation. Public show of family support. That's actually a good idea, Dad said, his confidence returning. United front. Show everyone the Myers family stands together. They were already calculating how to use my $8 million. Brandon muttered something about construction costs. Dad mentioned bridge funding. Mom was smiling that relieved smile of hers, crisis averted, family intact. None of them noticed the text I'd sent earlier. None of them saw the response that had just come through. See you at the summit. Everything's prepared. DH. 48 hours, I repeated, and left. Behind me, I heard Brandon laugh. She'll cave, she always does. If only they knew. The caving had ended the day grandmother introduced me to David Harrison. Everything since then had been preparation for this moment. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, hit that subscribe button right now. I'm about to show you exactly how I turned 15 years of dismissal into the most satisfying reversal of my life. And trust me, what happens at the summit will change everything. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. I drove straight to Quantum Ventures, where David was waiting in the conference room with the Myers construction files spread across the table. They brought lawyers? He looked unsurprised when I nodded. Your father doesn't do anything halfway. Harrison and Associates, your old firm. David laughed. Those sharks? They must be desperate. He pulled up a document on his tablet. Speaking of desperate, look at this morning's construction permits. The screen showed Myers Construction's latest filing, another extension request for Waterfront Tower, their fourth in 2 months. They're hemorrhaging money, David said. $15,000 a day in penalties alone. Your brother's been telling investors everything's on schedule, but 3 separate subcontractors have filed liens. How long before it goes public? Without new funding? Days. The November 20th deadline isn't just about losing the project anymore. If they default, the city can audit their other contracts, find the pattern of underbidding. I thought about Dad's eye twitch, Mom's trembling hands. They knew how close they were to the edge. The summit is their Hail Mary, David continued. Robert's been calling every major investor on the West Coast, promising impossible returns, guaranteed city contracts. He's betting everything on landing one big fish. They need us more than they know, David smiled. No, Maya. They need you. The investment committee approved this deal because of your analysis, your relationship with the city planning board, your reputation in this industry. He paused. The reputation you built while they called you a failure. I picked up the investment contract. $150 million. Enough to save Myers Construction or let it crumble. Your father's about to learn what real power looks like, David said. I thought about Brandon's smirk, Dad's dismissal, 15 years of being told I'd never amount to anything. No, I said. He's about to learn what his daughter is actually worth. The next morning, I prepared meticulously. The Forbes article proof had arrived. 40 under 40. Maya Myers, the quiet force behind Seattle's biggest deals. The photographer had captured me in the Quantum Ventures boardroom, city skyline behind me, the same skyline Brandon claimed to be building. David knocked and entered. You sure about this? 15 years, sure. He handed me my new business cards, fresh from the printer. Maya Myers, Managing Partner, Quantum Ventures. The title I'd earned in 2019, but never mentioned at family dinners. Why bother? They'd never asked about my work beyond mockery. The presentation's loaded on the main screen, David said. Investment Committee's final approval, all signatures, including yours from Monday. I pulled up the contract one more time. Section 7.3 glowed on the screen. Primary investor retains veto power over all major financial decisions, including but not limited to executive appointments, budget allocations exceeding one numbers, and structural reorganization. In simple terms, whoever controlled this investment controlled Myers Construction. They'll fight it, David warned. With what leverage? They need this money in 4 days or they're finished. My phone buzzed. Brandon. Hope you're practicing your signature for tomorrow. Dad's already allocated your $8 million, new equipment for waterfront. Another text from Mom. Wear something nice to the summit. United front, remember? They were so certain, so confident that the family disappointment would fold, would sign away her inheritance to save their empire. Just like I'd folded for 15 years, accepting their dismissal, their mockery, their assumptions. David stood to leave, then paused. Maya, you know you don't have to do this. We could fund a dozen other projects. It's not about the money anymore. What's it about? I looked at my grandmother's photo on my desk. Proving her right. She said I was the brave one. Tomorrow, I finally show them why. November 18th, 9 a.m., Seattle Convention Center. 500 of the Pacific Northwest's most influential construction and development professionals filled the main hall. The annual Northwest Construction Summit, where deals were made, partnerships forged, and reputations built or destroyed. Robert Myers commanded the main stage, every inch the successful CEO in his $3,000 suit. The massive screen behind him displayed Waterfront Tower, Seattle's next landmark. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice booming with practiced authority. Myers Construction isn't just building towers, we're building the future. I stood at the back with David, watching my father work the crowd. He was good at this. The performance, the promise, the carefully crafted illusion of success. The waterfront tower represents $200 million in development, he continued. 40 stories of innovation, and I'm pleased to announce that funding is fully secured. A murmur through the crowd. Several investors leaned forward. In this room, fully secured meant contracts signed, money transferred. It was a definitive statement. Brandon stood near the stage, chest puffed with inherited pride, already shaking hands with potential partners. Mom sat in the front row, playing the supportive wife perfectly. We'll be signing final papers this week, Dad said, the lie flowing smoothly. Construction acceleration begins Monday. David whispered, He's really going all in. He has to. It's this or bankruptcy. I saw the moment Dad spotted me. A flicker of surprise, then satisfaction. The prodigal daughter had come to watch his triumph, to sign over her money in front of everyone, the perfect power play. He gestured toward me. Even my daughter Maya came to witness this historic moment. A few chuckles from those who knew the family dynamics. Brandon actually laughed out loud. The countdown had begun. Come on up here, Maya, Dad called out, his tone patronizing. Even my daughter came to learn from the best. The crowd laughed. Those who knew our history laughed harder. Robert Myers' disappointing daughter, the one who'd abandoned the family business to play with spreadsheets. I started walking forward, David beside me. That's my sister, Brandon announced to a group of investors. She works in, what is it again, Maya? Mutual funds? Something like that, I said quietly, continuing toward the stage. Dad was in his element now, the king, holding court. You know, folks, family businesses are about legacy. Some of us were born for this industry. He looked directly at me. Others, well, they find their own little paths. More laughter. Mom's smile was frozen, uncomfortable but compliant. 24 hours left on that deadline, Maya, Brandon whispered as I passed. Hope you brought the checkbook. I reached the stage steps. Dad extended his hand to help me up, the gesture magnanimous and false. Everyone, Maya Myers, Proof that not every Myers has construction in their blood. The laughter was louder now. 500 people watching Robert Myers publicly diminish his daughter, establishing the hierarchy for all to see. Some of us were born for this business, he repeated, milking the moment. Others, well, at least she showed up to support the family today. I stood on that stage, looking out at the sea of faces, some sympathetic, most amused, the same dynamics I'd endured for 15 years, just on a bigger stage. Brandon called out from the floor, "Maybe we can find her a job in accounting." The crowd roared. Dad basked in it, completely unaware that he'd just handed me the perfect setup. "Actually," I said into the microphone, "I'm not here to support. I'm here to invest." The laughter stopped. Laughter. Dad's smile tightened but held. "That's sweet, Maya. But Waterfront Tower is a 200 million project. This isn't about your little inheritance." He turned back to the crowd, trying to reclaim control. "As I was saying, we're fully funded. Our primary investor has committed the entire amount needed to complete this revolutionary project." The screen behind him changed to architectural renderings, gleaming glass and steel, Seattle's supposed next landmark. "By Q2 next year, Waterfront Tower will transform the skyline," he continued. "Our investors will see 30% returns within 18 months, guaranteed." Several audience members exchanged glances. 30% was impossibly high, even for Seattle's hot market. "Mr. Myers," called out Sandra Chen from Pacific Development, "who is your primary investor?" Dad's eye twitched. "We'll be announcing that shortly. They're here today, actually." "Then bring them up," someone shouted. "Let's meet them." "Of course." Dad scanned the crowd with performed confidence. "Our primary investor should be arriving any moment." Brandon looked confused. Mom's hands were clasped tight. They had no investor. This was all theater, hoping someone in this room would bite. "While we wait," Dad said, sweat beading on his forehead, "let me show you the construction timeline." But the crowd was restless now. In this room, vague promises meant nothing. They wanted names, contracts, proof. "Mr. Myers," Sandra pressed, "if funding is secured, why haven't you filed the permits for accelerated construction?" "Technical formalities," he said quickly. "Everything will be filed Monday." The murmur grew skeptical. These were professionals who knew bullshit when they heard it. David stepped onto the stage beside me. The crowd noticed. David Harrison was known here, respected. When he moved, people paid attention. "Actually," David said, taking the microphone, "I think I can help clarify the situation." The silence stretched for 3 excruciating seconds. Dad's practiced smile froze. "David Harrison. I didn't realize Quantum Ventures was attending today." "We never miss the summit," David said smoothly. "Especially when we're involved in such a significant project." Brandon's phone started buzzing, then another, then dozens throughout the audience as people Googled Quantum Ventures Waterfront Tower. "Mr. Myers," David continued, "you mentioned your primary investor is here. Should we discuss the terms?" "This isn't the time," Dad started. "When is the time? You have 4 days until default." David let that land. "Unless, of course, you've secured other funding?" The crowd was fully engaged now. This wasn't a presentation anymore. It was blood in the water, and everyone smelled it. Dad's phone rang. He silenced it. It rang again immediately. "Perhaps," David said, addressing the audience now, "Mr. Myers would like to explain why 3 investors pulled out last week, or why there are 4 construction liens filed against Waterfront Tower." "That's confidential." "It's public record." David pulled out his tablet, projecting documents onto the main screen. 4 liens totaling 12 million, unpaid subcontractors, missed deadlines. The murmur became a roar. Phones came out. Photos snapped. Texts fired off. Mom stood up in the front row, her face pale. Brandon was pushing through the crowd toward the stage. "This is inappropriate," Dad managed, his voice cracking. "What's inappropriate," David said, "is announcing secured funding that doesn't exist. Unless," he turned to me, Ms. Myers, didn't you mention something about an investment? Every eye in the room turned to me. The failed daughter, the family disappointment, standing center stage while her father's empire crumbled. Mr. Myers, David said quietly, but the microphone caught it. I represent Quantum Ventures. We need to discuss terms. The crack in Dad's facade became a chasm. This is not the time, Dad repeated, but his voice had lost all authority. It's exactly the time, David said. You have 500 potential investors watching. If Waterfront Tower is fully funded as you claim, let's discuss it. Brandon reached the stage, grabbing Dad's arm. What the hell is happening? Mr. Harrison, Dad tried to recover. If Quantum Ventures has interest, we should meet privately. Like you met privately with your daughter yesterday? With 3 lawyers to steal her inheritance? Gasps rippled through the crowd. This was beyond business now. This was family drama on the industry's biggest stage. I represent Quantum Ventures' interest in Waterfront Tower, David continued. 150 million in available funding. But our managing partner has concerns about your business practices. Your managing partner? Dad's eye twitched violently now. Yes, she's reviewed your financials extensively, the real ones, not the versions you've been showing investors. Sandra Chen called out, "Who is your managing partner?" David smiled. Someone who's been studying Myers Construction for years, someone who knows every detail of your operations, your debts, your desperate situation. Dad was sweating through his suit now. We don't need. You need exactly 150 million by November 20th, David interrupted. Or you lose everything, your company, your reputation, your legacy. The crowd was recording everything now. This would be all over Seattle by lunch. So, David said, turning to face the audience, should we discuss terms? Or should I tell these 500 people exactly why Quantum Ventures is hesitant to invest? Brandon whispered urgently in Dad's ear. Mom had left her seat, moving toward the exit. Fine, Dad spat. Name your terms. David gestured to me. I'll let our managing partner handle that. The silence was deafening. Can you imagine the look on his face? If you're enjoying this moment as much as I enjoyed living it, please hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's success. Stay tuned, because the next part is where everything changes. Your managing partner? Dad's voice cracked completely. David nodded toward me. You've already met her. I stepped forward, pulling out my business card. The new ones, printed yesterday. Maya Myers, managing partner, Quantum Ventures. The sound that escaped Dad's throat wasn't quite a word. Brandon actually staggered backward. That's impossible, Brandon said into the microphone he'd grabbed. She's just what? I asked, my voice carrying across the silent hall. Just the family failure? Just the disappointment who abandoned construction for imaginary money? The crowd was mesmerized. Phones recorded from every angle. This is a joke, Dad managed. Some kind of stunt. No joke. I handed him my business card. I've been managing partner since 2019. 5 years of building Quantum Ventures into a $500 million fund while you told everyone I'd never amount to anything. Mom reappeared at the side door, frozen in place. You're lying, Brandon said. This is about the inheritance. You're trying to. I don't need grandmother's 8 million, I said clearly. I manage 500 million. I make more in quarterly bonuses than you make in a year. David pulled up the screen behind us. There it was, my photo from the Quantum Ventures website, managing partner, clear as day. How? Dad's single word carried 15 years of disbelief. Grandmother introduced me to David 5 years ago, said I deserved better than your constant dismissal. She was right. The crowd exploded in whispers. The Myers family drama was legendary in Seattle business circles, but this was unprecedented. So, I said, taking the microphone, let's discuss that investment. Publicly. Since you announced your funding was secured, I'm sure everyone would love to hear the terms. The screen behind us changed. David had pulled up the Forbes article. 40 under 40, Maya Myers, the quiet force behind Seattle's biggest deals. My professional headshot filled the 20-foot screen. The article detailed everything: quantum ventures growth under my leadership, the 300% returns, the major developments I'd funded across the Pacific Northwest. Published September 2024, David announced to the crowd. Your daughter has been one of Seattle's most successful investment managers for years. You just never bothered to ask. Someone in the crowd shouted, "She funded the Cascade Towers project." "And Belltown Square," another added. "The entire Riverside development," Sandra Chen called out, staring at me with new recognition. "That was you?" I nodded. "All of them. Built by companies that actually deliver on their promises." Dad's legs seemed to give out. He gripped the podium for support. The Forbes article scrolled on screen, highlighting key passages. Myers brings a unique analytical approach, consistently identifies undervalued opportunities. Her portfolio outperforms market standards by 300%. "This can't be real," Brandon said weakly. "More real than your fully secured funding," I replied. "More real than the 30 million in debt you're hiding from investors." Gasps from the crowd. Several investors were already heading for exits. "Maya." Dad's voice was barely a whisper now, the microphone catching his desperation. "Please, not here." "Why not here? You brought me on stage to humiliate me, called me a failure in front of 500 people, laughed about how I don't have construction in my blood." I turned to the audience. "He's right about one thing. I don't have construction in my blood. I have something better. I have the money you all need to build." The power shift was visible, physical. Dad shrinking, me expanding, filling the space I'd always deserved. "This is a mistake," Dad stammered, sweat streaming down his face. "There's been a misunderstanding." "The only mistake," I said, pulling the investment folder from my briefcase, "was underestimating me for 15 years. The Quantum Ventures logo gleamed on the folder. Inside, $150 million of salvation or damnation. "Yesterday, you ambushed me with lawyers, demanded I sign over my inheritance in 72 hours, threatened to destroy my reputation if I didn't comply." The crowd was absolutely silent now. This was better than any keynote speech. "You needed that 8 million to show investors you had capital, leverage for this exact moment, because without it, everyone would know Myers Construction is broke." "Maya, please," Mom called from the side. "But here's what you didn't know," I continued. "I've been analyzing Myers Construction's finances for 2 years. Every contract, every loan, every lie you told investors." I opened the folder, revealing the documents inside. 150 million in approved funding, ready to transfer, enough to save Waterfront Tower and Myers Construction. Hope flickered in Dad's eyes. "All you have to do is sign." I smiled. "Ironic, isn't it? Yesterday you demanded my signature. Today I have yours." Brandon lunged for the folder, but David blocked him. "Read the terms," I said, handing Dad the contract, "especially Clause 7.3. His hand shook as he read. I watched his face change as he reached the key section. "Complete financial oversight?" His voice broke. "Veto power over all decisions?" 15 years of calling me a failure," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "And now your empire's survival depends on my signature, my approval, my money." The irony was perfect, and everyone in that room felt it. 150 million available," I announced to the room. "But conditions apply." Dad's hands shook as he held the contract. Brandon tried to read over his shoulder. "First, full financial audit. External firm, complete transparency. Every hidden debt, every falsified report, every dollar Brandon expensed for his personal habits." Brandon went white. "You can't." "Second, restructuring of executive positions. Performance-based, not nepotism-based." Mom gasped from the doorway. "And third," I said, making eye contact with Dad. That 30 million you're hiding from investors? The debt you shuffled between projects to avoid detection? That gets disclosed. Today. The crowd erupted. 30 million in hidden debt was fraud adjacent, enough to trigger investigations. You're lying, Dad said desperately. David pulled up another document on screen. Seattle Municipal Records. 3 separate liens filed last week. 12 million in unpaid subcontractor fees. Shall I continue? Sandra Chen stood up. Robert, is this true? Other investors were standing now, phones out, making calls. The exodus had begun. It's complicated, Dad stammered. Temporary cash flow issues. It's fraud, someone shouted. Maya, Dad turned to me, his voice breaking completely. You're destroying everything I built. No. You destroyed it with ego and lies. I'm offering to save it, but on my terms. I held up the contract. Sign it, and Quantum Ventures funds Waterfront Tower. Refuse, and you default in 4 days. Your choice. This is extortion. This is business. You taught me that, remember? Never show weakness, never give ground, take everything you can. I smiled coldly. Thanks for the lessons, Dad. The entire room waited. 500 people watching Robert Myers face the impossible choice. Surrender to his failure daughter, or lose everything. 72 hours, I said. Sound familiar? We can discuss this privately, Dad pleaded, his commanding voice reduced to a whisper. Please, Maya, not in front of... Like you ambushed me privately, with 3 lawyers and emotional blackmail? I turned to the crowd. He demanded my inheritance to prop up his failing company, said I'd be cut off from the family if I didn't comply. That's family business, Brandon shouted, pushing past David. You vindictive... Careful, David warned. Everything's being recorded. Indeed, hundreds of phones captured every second. Hashtag Myers meltdown was already trending. Dad grabbed my arm. Maya, I'm your father. Now you remember that? After 15 years of calling me a disappointment? I was trying to motivate you. By telling everyone I'd never amount to anything? By laughing when Brandon said I played with imaginary money? I pulled free from his grip. You have 72 hours to decide. Sign the contract, accept oversight, and save your company, or refuse and lose everything. You can't do this to family. Family? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Was it family when you held that meeting while grandmother was dying, dividing her assets before she was even gone? She heard you, by the way, every word. Mom started crying. Real tears this time, not the practiced ones. Was it family when you tried to steal my inheritance? When you brought lawyers to intimidate me? Dad's phone rang incessantly. Board members, investors, reporters, everyone wanted answers. Mr. Myers, Sandra Chen called out, is Myers Construction still a viable investment? He couldn't answer. The king of Seattle construction stood speechless on his own stage, dethroned by the daughter he'd dismissed. 72 hours, I repeated. Though honestly, you might not have that long. I picked up the contract and slowly, deliberately placed it back in the folder. I won't be signing today, I announced. Dad's face flooded with momentary relief, thinking I might be backing down. Or any day, under the current circumstances. The relief evaporated. You want my money? My funds investment? Then things change. Completely. Brandon stepped forward. You can't hold us hostage. I'm not holding anyone hostage. I'm offering a business deal, one that requires certain adjustments. I turned to address the room, ensuring everyone heard the next part. Myers Construction needs new leadership. The current executive team has proven incompetent. Hidden debt, falsified reports, nepotism over merit. You're trying to destroy us, Dad said. I'm trying to save you from yourselves. But salvation comes with conditions. I pulled out a second document. This is what Quantum Ventures requires. Full financial audit by Morrison & Associates. New CFO from outside the family. Brandon steps down from VP role. Never, Brandon shouted. Then you get nothing. Company defaults Monday. Everyone in this room will know Myers Construction failed because Brandon Myers' ego mattered more than 500 jobs. The crowd murmured. Employees, subcontractors, their families, all casualties of pride. And, I continued, a formal public apology for 15 years of dismissal, for attempting to steal my inheritance, for everything. You want me to humiliate myself? You already did that. I want you to take responsibility. Dad looked around the room, investors leaving, phones recording, his empire crumbling in real time. Unless, I let the word hang. Everyone leaned in. Unless what? Dad asked, desperate for any alternative. Unless you can find another investor with 150 million in the next 72 hours. Good luck with that. Here are my terms, I said, voice carrying across the silent hall. Non-negotiable. Dad stood frozen as I listed them. 1. Formal apology for 15 years of dismissal. Public. On record. 2. Brandon steps down from VP role immediately. He can reapply for a position he's actually qualified for. Never, Brandon spat. Then Meyer Construction dies Monday. Your choice. 3. My inheritance remains untouched. No claims, no lawsuits, no manipulation. Mom stepped forward. Maya, please. 4. Full restructuring with oversight from Quantum Ventures for 2 years. Every major decision requires approval. That's corporate takeover, Dad protested. It's survival. You taught me that business is about leverage, Dad. Thanks for the lesson. I looked at the contract in my hand, then at the crowd of witnesses. 5. The 30 million in hidden debt gets disclosed to all investors within 24 hours. Full transparency. Several investors were already on their phones with lawyers. And 6. I paused, meeting Dad's eyes. You acknowledge, publicly, that your daughter, the one you called a failure, built something you never could, a legitimate, successful business based on merit, not nepotism. The terms hung in the air like a guillotine. This is revenge, Dad whispered. No, revenge would be letting you fail without options. This is business. Clean, professional, with clear terms. I handed the contract to David. You have 72 hours. Though given what's happening, I gestured to the fleeing investors. I'd decide faster. Maya. Ms. Myers, I corrected. In business settings, it's Ms. Myers, managing partner of Quantum Ventures, the company that might save yours if you can swallow your pride long enough to sign. Brandon's phone buzzed. He looked at it and went pale. The board's calling an emergency meeting. The countdown had begun. I stepped away from the podium, David falling into step beside me. Maya, wait, Dad called out, but I kept walking. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. 500 of Seattle's most influential people watching Maya Myers, the failure, the disappointment, walk away from her father's destruction with complete composure. Ms. Myers, Sandra Chen intercepted me. Pacific Development would love to discuss potential partnerships. My office Monday, I said, handing her my card. Maya! Brandon pushed through the crowd. You can't leave. We need to discuss. You had 15 years to discuss. You chose mockery instead. Behind us, Dad stood frozen at the podium, the empty microphone capturing his ragged breathing. The screen still showed my Forbes article, my success documented for all to see. Robert, someone shouted, is it true about the hidden debt? Mr. Myers, what about our contracts? Where's the secured funding you promised? The questions bombarded him, but he couldn't answer. The king had been dethroned, and everyone knew it. 3 more investors approached me before I reached the exit. Thompson Construction, Cascade Developments, Emerald Properties, all wanting meetings, all seeing opportunity in Myers Construction's collapse. Vultures, David murmured. Business people, I corrected. They smell blood in the water. Your family's blood. My family drew first blood 15 years ago. They just never expected me to survive long enough to return the favor. As we reached the doors, I turned for one last look. Dad remained on stage, surrounded but alone. Mom sat in a chair, head in her hands. Brandon was screaming into his phone. The empire they'd built on ego and lies was crumbling in real time. And I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret. Just the clean, simple clarity of justice served. Within 3 hours, Meyer's meltdown was trending across Seattle. I sat in my office at Quantum Ventures, watching the fallout on multiple screens. The video had been shared thousands of times. "Daughter destroys dad's empire in epic reversal," read one headline. David knocked and entered. The board of Myers Construction called. Emergency meeting in progress. And 5 investors have formally withdrawn. Stock dropped 30% in after-hours trading. My phone buzzed constantly. Reporters, investors, family friends. I ignored them all. "Brandon's been suspended pending investigation," David continued. "Apparently, the board found some interesting expenses in his accounts. The cocaine? Among other things. Trips to Vegas charged as client entertainment. A boat registered to the company but docked at his personal marina." Another screen showed the local news. A reporter stood outside Myers Construction headquarters. Sources inside the company confirm that without immediate funding, the waterfront tower project will default on Monday, potentially triggering the largest construction bankruptcy in Seattle history. "Your father called 6 times, David said. "Let him wait. He made me wait 15 years. An email popped up from Sandra Chen. "Watched your presentation. Brilliant. Would love to discuss you managing our development fund." 3 similar emails followed. In one morning, I'd gone from the family disappointment to the most sought-after investment manager in Seattle. "Maya," David said carefully, "they have 48 hours left. The board's pressuring your father to accept your terms." "He won't. His pride won't let him." "Pride or bankruptcy? Which do you think he'll choose?" I looked at the photo on my desk, grandmother Eleanor and me at my college graduation, the only family member who'd attended. With my father, pride, every time. Day 2. The implosion accelerated. "Brandon Myers fired from Myers Construction," read the Seattle Times headline. The article detailed his excessive expenses, the hidden debts, the falsified reports. Someone on the board had leaked everything. Mom called while I was reviewing contracts. I almost didn't answer. "Maya." Her voice was hollow. "Brandon's lost everything. The board terminated him with cause. No severance. No references. He made his choices. He's your brother. He's a liability who spent company money on personal addictions while small contractors went unpaid." "You destroyed him." "No, Mom. I revealed him. There's a difference." She was crying now. Real tears, not the practiced ones. "Your father's locked himself in his office. Won't eat, won't speak to anyone. The lawyers are saying we could lose the house if the company goes under." "The house is in your name. You're protected." "How did you know that?" "I know everything about Myers Construction's finances. Have for years." "Then you know we're ruined without your help." "I offered help, with conditions." "Those aren't conditions, they're humiliations. They're accountability, something this family has avoided for decades." Dad's lawyer, not the intimidating one from the ambush but a younger associate, sent a formal email. "Mr. Myers is prepared to discuss modified terms." I forwarded it to David with 2 words. "Original terms only." The response came within minutes. "The board is recommending Mr. Myers accept all conditions." By evening, Brandon had been escorted from the building by security. Photos leaked of him carrying a banker's box to his Tesla, his face a mask of rage and humiliation. "The board wants stability," their statement read. "Mr. Brandon Myers's conduct does not reflect our values." The same board that had enabled him for years now threw him overboard to save themselves. Day 3, November 20th, the deadline. At 7 a.m. my phone rang. Dad. Maya. His voice was broken, aged 10 years in 3 days. I was wrong. I said nothing, letting the silence stretch. Wrong about everything, about you, about what constitutes success, about what I built versus what you built. Go on. The board's given me an ultimatum. Accept your terms, or they'll remove me as CEO. Install emergency leadership. And? I'll accept all of it. The apology, the restructuring, Brandon's removal, everything. And the hidden debt disclosure? A long pause. Yes. When? Today. The board's calling a press conference at noon. Victory should have tasted sweeter. Instead, I felt only the weight of necessity. There's something else, Dad said. I need you to know. Your grandmother, before she died, she said something. Said you were the only one who inherited her real gift. The ability to see through bullshit. She was right. I know that now. His voice cracked. I'm sorry, Maya. Not just for the inheritance, for 15 years of Save it for the press conference. Will you be there? I looked at the contract on my desk. Quantum Ventures Salvation for Myers Construction. I'll be there, with the funding. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This isn't forgiveness, it's business. I understand. No, Dad, you don't, but you will. Every day for the next 2 years when you need my approval for decisions, when you see what real oversight looks like, when you learn what it means to be accountable to someone you dismissed as worthless. But then I added softer. The company will survive. The jobs will be saved. That's what matters. But I found another investor instead, he said quietly. My blood froze. Another investor? I kept my voice steady. No, Dad said quickly. No, I'm sorry. I was testing. Seeing if you'd panic. Old habits. Still playing games? Even now? I'm sorry. You're right. He took a breath. I accept your terms. All of them. The board's already drawn up the restructuring plan based on your requirements. By noon, everything had changed. The press conference was packed. Dad stood at the podium, reading from prepared statements. The apology was public, thorough, and humiliating. He acknowledged the hidden debts, the mismanagement, Brandon's termination. Myers Construction will undergo complete restructuring under the oversight of Quantum Ventures and its managing partner, Maya Myers, he read, voice flat. My daughter. I signed the funding documents on stage. $150 million, transferred immediately. Myers Construction would survive, but it would never be the same. The new CEO, hired from outside, a woman with 30 years of experience, took the podium next. We're implementing immediate changes, full financial transparency, merit-based positions, no exceptions for family members. Brandon wasn't there. Mom told me later he'd left Seattle, moved to Arizona to start over. Within a week, Myers Construction stabilized at 70% of its previous value. The waterfront tower project resumed. 500 jobs were saved. But the company Robert Myers had built as his personal kingdom was gone. In its place stood a professional corporation with oversight, accountability, and a board that actually functioned. Dad stepped back from daily operations. The stress had aged him visibly. He kept an office but no real power. Every major decision required my approval for 2 years. The empire survived, but the emperor was dethroned, and everyone in Seattle knew who held the real power now. 6 months later, I established the Eleanor Myers Foundation with the $8 million inheritance, untouched, as promised. The foundation provided scholarships for young women entering finance and construction, particularly those from families that didn't support their ambitions. Grandmother would have loved the irony. At the first board meeting I attended as oversight partner, Dad sat at the far end of the table. The same spot I'd occupied at family dinners, the helper's seat, not the head. The Q2 projections need revision, I said, sliding the reports back. Too optimistic given current market conditions. Yes, Ms. Myers, the new CFO agreed. Dad said nothing. He'd learned. We established new family boundaries. Quarterly dinners, but with written ground rules. No business discussions. No comparisons. No dismissive comments about anyone's career. Mom had them printed and framed in the dining room. The first dinner was awkward. Brandon didn't attend, still in Arizona, supposedly running a small contracting business. Dad ate in silence. Mom tried too hard to fill the gaps. But slowly, something shifted. Without the power dynamics, without the constant competition and dismissal, we found something we'd never had: ordinary conversation. Dad asked about my work, genuinely asked, not to mock but to understand. I learned about his childhood, the pressure his own father had put on him to be strong. I thought I was preparing you, he said one evening, making you tough. You were teaching me that I'd never be enough. I see that now. The relationships weren't healed. 15 years of damage doesn't disappear overnight. But they were functional, professional, occasionally almost warm. Respect isn't negotiable anymore, I told them clearly. You don't have to like my choices, but you will respect them or we're done. They respected them. The family that had once revolved around Myers Construction's hierarchy found a new equilibrium. Not perfect, not close, but sustainable. And that was enough. Within a year, Quantum Ventures' assets under management crossed $1 billion. The Myers Construction turnaround became a Harvard Business School case study. They invited me to speak at their leadership symposium, Power, Family, and Corporate Governance, the Myers Reversal. Standing at that podium, looking out at 200 future business leaders, I thought about all the family dinners where I'd been told I'd never amount to anything. The greatest liability in business isn't debt or competition, I told them. It's the assumption that past dynamics predict future outcomes. That someone deemed a failure can't become successful. That power structures are permanent. The students took notes furiously. Myers Construction survived because its board finally chose competence over nepotism. It took near bankruptcy to break that pattern. A hand went up. What happened to your brother? Brandon Myers now runs a small contracting firm in Phoenix. 15 employees. He's actually good at it when he's not playing corporate prince. 6 months into his exile, Brandon had called. Not to apologize, he wasn't there yet, but to ask for advice. Real advice about running a business without Dad's safety net. I'd given it. Even offered him a position at Quantum Ventures, junior analyst, entry level, same as any college graduate. Junior analyst? He'd laughed bitterly. I was VP of a $100 million company. You were VP of your father's company. This would be yours to earn. It took him 3 months to swallow his pride and accept. He was surprisingly good at it. Without the entitlement, without the guaranteed promotion, Brandon actually worked, learned, grew. He's still an ass, David observed, watching Brandon present his first investment analysis. But he's a competent ass now. By year 2, Brandon had earned his first promotion. Merit-based, review board approved, no family influence. He called that night. Thank you, was all he said. It was a start. They called me a failure. I called it motivation. Every dismissive comment, every public humiliation, every family dinner where I was reminded of my inadequacy, it all became fuel. Not for revenge, but for something better. Proof that worth isn't determined by someone else's inability to see it. The waterfront tower opened on schedule, gleaming against Seattle's skyline. At the ribbon cutting, Dad stood in the crowd. Not on stage, not at the podium, just another observer. He caught my eye and nodded. Not the dismissive nod of the past, but something approaching respect. You saved us, he said quietly afterward. No. I gave you the opportunity to save yourselves. With conditions. The conditions were fair. They were necessary. Success, I learned, isn't about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. Every small victory building towards something larger, something undeniable. But the greatest success isn't the billion-dollar fund or the Harvard keynotes or even the public vindication. It's the boundaries. The ability to say, this is acceptable and this is not, and have it respected. Family doesn't give you the right to diminish someone. Love doesn't excuse cruelty. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. These aren't easy lessons. They cost me 15 years of self-doubt, thousands in therapy, and nearly losing myself trying to earn approval that was never coming. But they led me here, to a place where my worth isn't negotiable, where my success speaks for itself, where family dinners happen on my terms or not at all. The view from my office hasn't changed. Still the Seattle skyline, still the buildings Brandon claims to have built. But I see it differently now. I see it as mine. Thank you for watching my story. If you've ever been underestimated, remember, your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see it. Subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself, and comment below with your own experience of proving doubters wrong. What boundaries did you have to set with toxic family members? I read every comment. See you in the next video.